and we are all volunteers at Tamarack. Tamarack is located just north of Sagertown, Pennsylvania, and we take care of sick, injured, and orphaned wildlife. Our specialty is birds of prey, so that would be eagles, hawks, falcons, owls, vultures. But we also take in seed-eating songbirds and baby opossums and turtles. We are easy to find on tamarackwildlife.org. And you can find us also on Facebook, where you can find really interesting pictures of birds that are coming in to be rehabilitated and birds that are being released back to the wild. In addition to our rehabilitation, we do education programs, which is why we are here today. And we do thank Northwestern Rural Electric and Armstrong for sponsoring us at Antlers and Anglers. We have 8 education birds that all came to us with some sort of injury and cannot be released back into the wild because of a permanent disability. They're all very healthy birds, but they would not be able to make it because of some injury. All 3 of these birds that we have today have a wing injury. Did I miss on that? Okay. Our open house is going to be next Sunday from 1 to 3 out at the Wildlife Center. And we hope that you will come out and join us. You can get a tour of the facilities and see all of our education birds. And I guess I'll hand off to you.
Thank you. The first bird we're going to talk about is one of the most common raptors we have in northwestern Pennsylvania. This is a red-tailed hawk, and you can tell why she gets her name if you look at her tail. It's quite nice and red. This happens to be a female, and we call her Lady Hawk, the name she goes by. And Lady Hawk is 23 years old. So she has actually been with us almost her entire life as one of our education birds. The reason we have a pretty good idea of her age is that when she came to us, she wasn't still in her first year. She was just a young bird. And the reason we know is that red-tailed hawks, they don't get this red tail until their second year. So she was still didn't have a red tail when she got us. So, so we know about how old she really is. Now, the red tails, they are very common, not only here in North America, in Pennsylvania, but all throughout the country in North America. So whether we're here on the eastern part of the country or whether we're out on the west coast, you'll see red-tailed hawks. So they're very, very common birds. And they build their nests generally in tall trees. So they'll build a very big nest up in a tree. The nest could be maybe even 4 feet around. So they're very large nests. And they lay their eggs in the springtime, usually in April. And it takes about a month for the eggs to hatch. And both the parents, both the boy and the girl, the male and the female, they both take turns sitting on the eggs, keeping them warm, or incubating them. And then they take turns going out and finding food. And even after the eggs hatch, both birds take part in taking care of the babies, the chicks. So they'll take turns. Sometimes the father bird will stay with the babies, and the mother will go out hunting for food, and then sometimes they'll trade places. So it's a real cooperative effort with these birds. The red-tails, like a lot of other raptor species, they'll stay together as a pair for almost all their lives, their adult lives. So year after year, they'll have the same mate. And a lot of times they'll even return to the same nest, or they'll return to an area very close to where they've nested and build a new nest. But they may use the same nest for many, many years. They commonly will lay between 1 and 5 eggs, but most common you'll see about 3 eggs and about 3 of, and then they'll hatch and they'll have 3 chicks. And when the chicks, it takes them about 5 or 6 weeks to grow up, but they'll be the size of an adult bird when they leave the nest, when they finally leave. So the parents are really, really busy getting a lot of food to not only feed themselves, but to feed 3 other birds they're about the same size as they are. So these birds, the red-tails, one of their favorite things to eat are mice. They also like other small rodents and mammals like chipmunks or squirrels, or even mammals as small as moles. Occasionally they'll go after other things such as rabbits. They can usually catch and kill a mammal up to about 5 pounds. So they can go after some pretty big mammals, but they prefer smaller meals. A lot of it is because it would be much easier to bring a mouse back to the nest or a chipmunk back to the nest than a big rabbit. So they do eat a lot of mice, which is a good thing. They really do help keep the rodent population down. Of the 3, say if they have 3 chicks, the first year is really, really tough on the hawks, on the red-tails, and on a lot of birds. So it's typical for birds, if say there's 3 young birds in a nest, one of them will probably survive and grow up to be an adult. One of them most likely won't make it through its first year, and the other one may or may not. So about 50 to maybe 70% of the young birds don't make it through their first year. So it's a pretty high mortality rate for not only hawks, but even songbirds. So that's why they have so many in their nests. They hunt 2 different ways. A lot of times you'll see the red-tails, particularly if you drive along interstate highways. You'll see them perched in a tree or on a signpost, and they're waiting for usually mice or small rodents to run along the roadway. So they like to hunt in open areas. Also, although they build their nests in wooded areas, they hunt out in the open areas. And also you'll commonly see the birds flying way up high in big broad circles, soaring around, and they're looking off in the distance for their prey, whether it be a rabbit or a mouse, or sometimes other birds like doves or pheasants. If they can get them on the ground, they'll go after that sort of prey also. They will, they have big, broad wings, they have a big tail, and when they're soaring, they almost look like a kite soaring up in the sky. Okay, that's a good question. We don't know exactly, but she was found near a roadway, and she had an injured wing. And what we think happened was she was probably hit by a vehicle. One of the very common ways we get a lot of our birds into our rehabilitation center is that they are hit by vehicles.
We're able to repair this one to go back into the lab.
This one, she had a broken wing that started to mend and fuse before she came into the center. So it didn't mend correctly. And it wasn't the sort of injury that we would send to a veterinarian and have them re-break it. And try to fix it again. It's just not something that would be done. So she doesn't have very good flight at all. She's very, very limited flight. But otherwise, she's a healthy bird. She's been with us for 23 years. So we take care of her. We keep her in her own space, in her mew or room. It's about 10 feet by 10 feet. She has perches that she can fly back and forth to. She's still a wild bird. These birds are not pets, so we have to be careful how we handle them too. She mostly eats rats, so we get rats that come to us from laboratories usually that have used them, not the particular rat for an experiment, but the control rat. And when they're done with them, they give them to us. And they come in. No, the rats that we get are dead. They're frozen. Oh. We cut them up into pieces, and with her, we almost always are. Lately, we've been hand feeding her little pieces of rat, or we just leave them in there. No, all of our birds that we keep for education purposes, none of those birds get live food. They're all given dead food. Okay. We'll move on to our next species.
This is a peregrine falcon, and we're lucky to even have him around. Some of you may remember in the 50s and 60s, the use of DDT, a pesticide, was quite common, and it had a very, very serious effect on eagle populations and peregrine falcons. And the DDT would get into the water system and into the fish and other wildlife that these birds ate. And the effect it has on the birds is it robs them of the ability to produce calcium in their shells. So the shells of the birds, the eggs would become very, very weak. They'd sit on the shells to try and hatch them, and the shells would break. So by the early 1970s, the peregrine population east of the Mississippi was wiped entirely out. There was not a single peregrine falcon nest east of the Mississippi. Once DDT was banned, he's a real show-off, aren't you? Yes, you are. You love this, don't you? Once DDT became banned, we started to see rejuvenation of both the eagle and the peregrine population. Were they reintroduced? Yes, they were. Yep, they were reintroduced. What he just did was called a rouse, and it means that he's comfortable, aren't you? Yes. They're still quite rare. There aren't that many nests in Pennsylvania. I think 40 at last count that we know of. There is one nest up in Erie, interestingly enough, inside the Don John shipbuilding facility. So it's an indoor, the only known indoor peregrine falcon nest that we're aware of. This particular bird's name is Pierre. Pierre was found up in Erie. We're not positive how he was injured, but these birds, when they go after their food, which is other birds, go into a dive or what's called a stoop. And our best guess is that he was so focused, which they tend to be, on his prey, that he didn't see the electric wire and caught it with his left wing. And you can see that hangs, his left wing hangs just a little bit funny. I'm going to flap some more. Peregrines have some special adaptations because of the speed that they reach in those dives. Most of us think that the cheetah is the fastest animal on Earth, and it's true that they can go about 74 miles an hour. Flying on the level, a peregrine falcon can reach 70 miles an hour. But in a dive, or what's called a stoop, peregrines have been clocked up to 230 miles an hour. And they've developed special adaptations so that they can survive dives like that. Their feathers are very, very stiff. Unlike the owl's feathers or even the red-tailed hawk's feathers. So when he's in the dive, they're real close to his body, and they remain close and then go flying around. He also has little pads on the bottom of each one of his toes, because he'll attack birds in the air typically, and either take them in the air or knock them out of the air down to the ground and then get them on the ground, go down to the ground after them to take care of them. Right. And he also has, they're tough to see, but he has little cones. You can see the little holes on either side of his beak, nostrils, and he has little cones in his nostrils to deflect the air that is coming through there when he goes into those stoops, because if there was no deflection, be the possibility of literally blowing out his lungs because he's going so fast in those dives. So he's really a bird that has been built to do exactly what he does best, which is hunt birds.
How old is it?
He's about 11 or 12 years old. And he's a male, and like with most birds of prey, males tend to be about a third smaller than the females. So a female peregrine would be about another 30% bigger than Pierre. Well, in captivity like this, might get up to 15 or 16. Yep. So he's still got a few good years left, right? He also likes to bob his head, and it's a social kind of thing, right? And he gets upset if whoever's holding him doesn't do the same thing, don't you? That's right. Yeah, there's a lot of distraction going on. Do you have questions? It's a beautiful bird, isn't he? Yeah.
Well, the hawks and the falcons work the day shift. They are birds that hunt during the day, and now this, of course, is an owl who works the night shift. She would be nocturnal. This is Sophia, and she is a barred owl. It's B-A-R-R-E-D, not to be confused with a barn owl. She's called a barred owl because she has bars of color on her chest and also on her back. You can see that she would be very well camouflaged sitting in a tree. These birds nest in tree cavities, but they don't dig out that cavity themselves. They would count on the woodpeckers to do that for them, and then they would take over a cavity for their nest. They generally like to live in areas that might be near creeks or rivers, slightly swampy perhaps, and they would eat all of the small rodents, mice, voles, moles, but also would eat snakes and frogs, crayfish, lizards, and even small birds they would eat, or they might wade into a creek for some small fish. They have been known to do that. They are one of only 4 owls in North America that have the dark eyes. One of only 2 in Pennsylvania, and that would be the barred owl and the barn owl. She's looking around. She has a wing injury also, yes, and was found by a road, so we would assume that she was hit by a car. They often will hang out in a tree near a road because that would be a great place to see a mouse skittering across the road and a great place to catch a mouse. But they aren't real car smart, so they swoop down right in front of you at night and are often hit going after small rodents. We think she's about 13. She's been with us most of her life. We get very attached to our birds, and we do have 8 education birds that go with us out on programs, everything from preschools to nursing homes, and we hope to educate people about birds of prey. We also would invite you again to come out to Open House next Sunday, 1 to 3 out at the Wildlife Center, and to check us out, please, on tamarackwildlife.org. Okay, thank you.